In the 1940s, America had 30 Fourth of July desserts that millions of families could not celebrate without. Strawberry pretzel salad, flag sheet cake, and watermelon baskets appeared on every holiday table across the country. These colorful creations became the heart of every Independence Day celebration. Then something changed. One by one, they disappeared from family recipe books, backyard barbecues, and church picnics until they became little more than forgotten memories. Today, most Americans have no idea these patriotic desserts ever existed. These are the 30 forgotten 4th of July desserts America left behind. Strawberry pretzel salad sat on every 4th of July picnic table during the 1970s and 1980s. This wasn't actually a salad, despite its name. It was pure dessert from top to bottom. The dish combined 3 distinct layers that nobody makes together anymore. Crushed pretzels mixed with melted butter and sugar formed the bottom crust. The salty pretzel base baked at 350 degrees for 10 minutes. It cooled completely before adding the next layer. Softened cream cheese beat together with powdered sugar and whipped topping. This white, creamy layer spread carefully over the pretzel crust. The cream cheese had to seal the edges completely. Strawberry jello dissolved in boiling water with frozen strawberries added. The red gelatin mixture chilled until slightly thickened. Then it poured gently over the cream cheese layer. The entire dessert chilled for at least 4 hours until set. The finished salad had 3 beautiful layers visible from the side. Salty pretzel crust on bottom, sweet cream cheese in the middle, bright red strawberry jello on top. Each bite delivered all 3 textures at once. The contrast was absolutely perfect and addictive. But by 1995, the pretzel salad seemed too retro and outdated. Young people thought mixing pretzels with dessert was weird. Today, almost nobody under 40 has ever tasted this iconic dessert. Every bakery in America once displayed flag sheet cakes in their windows during June. White sheet cake baked in large rectangular pans and cooled completely flat. Vanilla buttercream frosting spread smooth across the entire surface like a blank canvas. Fresh strawberries sliced in half created the red stripes across the flag. Blueberries formed the blue square in the upper left corner. More strawberry halves made the remaining red stripes. The design was simple but stunning. Children pressed their faces against bakery windows to admire them. Families ordered them weeks in advance for their July 4th parties. The cake itself was basic vanilla or white cake. Nothing fancy about the flavor. The decoration made it special and patriotic. Each slice showed part of the American flag. The fresh berries added sweetness and juice. The buttercream was rich and smooth. Making the flag design required patience and planning. You had to count the stripes carefully. 7 red stripes and 6 white stripes total. But by the 1990s, grocery stores sold cheaper flag cakes. Store versions used colored frosting instead of real fruit. The artificial red and blue looked garish and fake. Today, nobody makes flag cakes with real strawberries and blueberries anymore.
Many of you have been asking where to find these recipes. We've gathered hundreds of them from the Depression era through the 1970s in our cookbook, Grandma's Kitchen. Complete instructions, pro tips in 10 chapters. Link is in the description below. Now, let's get back to the video.
Traditional strawberry shortcake appeared at every 4th of July celebration. This version used real biscuit shortcakes, not sponge cake. The biscuits were sweet, buttery, and tender. Flour, sugar, baking powder, and cold butter cut together. Heavy cream mixed in just until combined. The dough couldn't be overworked or biscuits turned tough. It patted out thick and cut into large rounds. The biscuits are baked at 425 degrees for 15 minutes until golden. Fresh strawberries hulled and sliced by hand. The berries tossed with white sugar and left to sit. This drew out natural juices and created sweet syrup. Heavy cream whipped with sugar and vanilla until stiff peaks formed. Assembly happened at the moment someone ordered it. A warm biscuit split in half horizontally. Strawberries with their syrup spooned generously over the bottom. A huge dollop of whipped cream piled on top. The top biscuit placed over everything. The finished shortcake towered high on the plate. Red berries and white cream looked patriotic. The biscuit absorbed the strawberry juice. Each bite combined tender biscuit, fresh berries, and rich cream. But frozen strawberries appeared in stores during the 1970s. The mushy texture ruined everything. Families stopped making real shortcakes with fresh berries. Hand-churned vanilla ice cream was the centerpiece of every July celebration. Families owned wooden ice cream churns that required serious labor. The custard base started with heating milk and sugar together. Beaten eggs tempered carefully into the hot milk mixture. Everything cooked slowly until thick enough to coat a spoon. Pure vanilla extract added at the end. The custard chilled overnight in the refrigerator. The next day, the real work began. The cold custard poured into the metal canister. Ice and rock salt layered around the canister. Someone had to crank the handle for 30 minutes straight. Your arm ached terribly from the constant turning. Children took turns cranking until exhausted. The ice cream thickened slowly inside the canister. Finally, it reached soft-serve consistency. Fresh vanilla ice cream scooped into bowls immediately. The flavor was pure and clean. Nothing artificial or overly sweet. Just real vanilla and cream. Families ate it plain or with fresh berries on top. The ice cream melted quickly in summer heat. Everyone had to eat fast, but electric ice cream makers appeared in the 1960s. Nobody wanted to crank by hand anymore. Then store-bought ice cream became cheaper and easier. By 1980, hand-churned vanilla ice cream had vanished completely. Fresh cherry pie was the official dessert of July 4th. The cherries came from Michigan orchards during their brief peak season. Sour cherries worked best because they weren't too sweet. Workers spent hours pitting fresh cherries by hand. This was tedious, messy work that stained everything red. The cherries mixed with white sugar, cornstarch, and almond extract. The almond extract was the secret ingredient everyone used. It enhanced the cherry flavor dramatically. The mixture filled a double-crust pie. The top crust is sealed with fork marks around the edges. Small slits cut in the center released steam during baking. The pies baked at 375 degrees for 50 minutes. The filling bubbled thick and red through the vents. The crust turned golden brown and flaky. The smell filled the entire house. The finished pie had to cool completely before slicing. Each slice revealed bright red cherries suspended in thick sauce. The cherries burst in your mouth with intense flavor. The almond extract added complexity and depth. Some people insisted cherry pie was superior to all others. But fresh cherries were only available 3 weeks each year. Canned cherry pie filling appeared during the 1960s. The artificial taste and mushy texture couldn't compare to fresh. These first 5 desserts represent the most beloved July 4th traditions America forgot. Strawberry pretzel layers, fresh berry flag cakes, hand-churned ice cream, and homemade cherry pie fed families through decades. The next 5 desserts move into frozen territory and patriotic designs nobody remembers today. Homemade firecracker bomb pops were what every kid wanted from their mothers to make during the 1970s. These weren't store-bought popsicles from the ice cream truck. Families made them at home in special popsicle molds. The red layer started with cherry Kool-Aid mixed with sugar and water. This poured into the bottom of each mold. The molds went into the freezer for 1 hour. The red layer had to freeze solid before adding the next. White layer came from lemonade mixed with condensed milk. This poured carefully over the frozen red layer, back into the freezer for another hour. Finally, blue layer made from blue raspberry Kool-Aid. Popsicle sticks inserted into the center before the final freeze. The whole thing froze overnight until completely solid. The finished popsicles had 3 distinct colored layers, red, white, and blue, stacked perfectly. Kids pulled them from the molds on hot afternoons. The popsicles were sweet, tart, and refreshing. Each lick revealed a different flavor. Children's tongues turned bright blue and red. Making them required patience and planning. You couldn't rush the freezing process. But by 1985, store-bought bomb pops became everywhere. The commercial version was cheaper and easier. Families stopped making homemade versions. Today, nobody remembers when firecracker pops were made at home. Layered berry trifles appeared in glass bowls at every July 4th potluck during the 1960s. The dessert required a special trifle bowl with straight sides. Everyone could see the beautiful layers through the glass. Pound cake baked and cut into cubes. The cake cubes layered in the bottom of the bowl. Vanilla pudding made from scratch with milk, eggs, and sugar. The pudding cooled completely before assembly. A layer of pudding spread over the cake cubes. Fresh strawberries sliced and layered on top of pudding. Then blueberries scattered over the strawberries. Whipped cream spread over the berries. The pattern repeated until the bowl was full. Cake, pudding, strawberries, blueberries, cream. Each layer visible through the glass. The top finished with whipped cream and fresh berries. The dessert chilled for at least 4 hours. Each spoonful contained all the layers at once. The cake soaked up the pudding and berry juice. The berries added freshness and tartness. The whipped cream lightened everything. Trifles were impressive and elegant. Guests always asked for the recipe. But trifle bowls went out of style by 1980. Young couples didn't register for them anymore. Nobody had the special bowl. The dessert disappeared completely without the proper dish. Molded Jell-O salads dominated every July 4th table from 1950 through 1975. These weren't simple Jell-O cups. They were elaborate layered molds that took 2 days to make. Red cherry Jell-O prepared first and poured into a bundt pan. It chilled until completely firm. That took at least 4 hours. White layer came next using lemon Jell-O mixed with sour cream. This poured carefully over the red layer. Back into the refrigerator for 4 more hours. Blue layer used berry blue Jell-O. It poured over the white layer. The entire mold chilled overnight. The next day came the scary part. The mold had to be unmolded onto a serving plate. Hot water ran over the outside of the pan briefly. A plate placed on top, and everything flipped quickly. Sometimes the mold released perfectly. Other times it stuck and ruined everything. When successful, the mold was absolutely stunning. 3 distinct layers of red, white, and blue. The colors were bright and patriotic. Guests gasped when they saw it. Each slice showed all 3 colors clearly. The texture was jiggly and fun. Children loved the wobble and bright colors. But Jell-O molds required special pans and patience. By 1980, nobody had time for 2-day desserts. Today, molded Jell-O is considered a joke. Fresh blueberry pie competed with cherry pie for the title of Best July 4th Dessert. The blueberries came from local farms during their short season. Workers picked them by hand in the hot sun. The berries had to be perfectly ripe, not too soft, not too hard. The berries mixed gently with white sugar, cornstarch, lemon juice, and cinnamon. The cornstarch thickened the juices during baking. Too little, and the pie was soupy. Too much, and it turned gummy. The balance had to be perfect. The berry mixture filled a double-crust pie, the top crust sealed with decorative crimping. Slits cut in the center for venting. The pies baked at 375 degrees for 50 minutes. The filling bubbled dark purple through the slits. The crust turned golden and flaky. The finished pie had to cool completely. Cutting it warm made everything run. Each slice revealed plump blueberries in thick purple sauce. The berries burst with intense flavor. The lemon juice brightened everything. The cinnamon added warmth. Some people insisted blueberry was superior to all fruit pies. The deep purple color looked almost black. But frozen blueberries flooded stores in the 1970s. They released too much liquid when baked. The pies turned soupy and disappointing. fresh blueberry pie became impossible to find. Southern families served bourbon pecan pie at every July 4th celebration with fierce pride. This wasn't regular pecan pie. The bourbon made it sophisticated and adult. Dark corn syrup mixed with brown sugar, melted butter, and beaten eggs. Good bourbon whiskey added at the end. The alcohol cooked off, but the flavor remained. Pecans arranged in concentric circles in an unbaked pie shell. The bourbon mixture poured carefully over the pecans. The pie baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes. The filling puffed up dramatically during baking. It settled as it cooled on the counter. The top formed a shiny, crackled surface. The pecans rose to the top and toasted golden. The inside stayed dense and sweet. The bourbon flavor was subtle but noticeable. It added depth and complexity. Adults loved the sophisticated taste. Children weren't allowed to eat it. The alcohol content was debated constantly. The pie was rich and intensely sweet. One small slice was enough. Coffee was mandatory with every serving. The dessert represented Southern hospitality and tradition. But bourbon in desserts seemed wrong to younger generations. They preferred simpler, cleaner flavors. By 1990, bourbon pecan pie had mostly disappeared. The first 10 forgotten desserts show America's July 4th traditions. Homemade popsicles and bourbon-spiked pies filled tables across the country. The next 10 desserts become even more elaborate and time-consuming. Nobody has the patience to make these anymore. Carved watermelon baskets, filled with fresh fruit, sat as centerpieces on July 4th tables during the 1960s and 1970s. These weren't simple fruit bowls. They were elaborate sculptures that took hours to create. A whole watermelon was carefully carved with a handle left in the middle. The flesh scooped out with a melon baller. Every bit of red watermelon removed and saved. The empty shell became a decorative basket. Sharp knives carved zigzag patterns around the rim. Some people carved stars and stripes into the sides. The handle wrapped with ribbon in red, white, and blue. The watermelon balls mixed with fresh blueberries, strawberries, and other seasonal fruit. Everything piled back into the carved basket. The finished centerpiece was absolutely stunning. Guests photographed it before eating. Children didn't want to ruin the beautiful carving. But the fruit had to be eaten before it spoiled. The watermelon basket stayed on the table for hours. Flies became a problem in the summer heat. The fruit started to warm and soften. Juice leaked from the bottom onto the tablecloth. Carving the basket required skill and patience. One wrong cut ruined the entire watermelon. Special carving tools helped but weren't necessary. YouTube didn't exist to show you how. You learned from watching your mother or grandmother. By 1985, pre-cut fruit appeared in grocery stores. Plastic containers were easier and cleaner. Nobody wanted to spend 3 hours carving watermelon anymore. The elaborate fruit baskets disappeared from picnic tables. Today, carved watermelon baskets only appear at fancy catered events. Home cooks never attempt them. The art form has been completely lost to younger generations. Sugar cookies cut into star shapes and decorated in patriotic colors were the pride of every baker's kitchen. These weren't simple cookies with frosting slapped on top. They were elaborate, decorated works of art that demanded hours of work. Sugar cookie dough chilled overnight until firm and workable. The dough rolled out thick on a floured surface. Star-shaped cookie cutters pressed into the dough carefully. The cookies baked at 350 degrees for 12 minutes until golden. They had to cool completely before any decorating could begin. Royal icing, prepared in 3 separate batches. One dyed red, one left white, one dyed blue. Small pastry bags filled with each color. The decorating required steady hands and endless patience. Outlines piped first around each star point. Then the center filled with flooding icing. The icing had to spread smooth without gaps or bubbles. Some stars got stripes of alternating colors across them. Others got dots scattered across the surface. Each cookie took 5 minutes to decorate properly by hand. A batch of 3 dozen cookies took hours to finish. The icing had to dry completely before stacking or moving. That took another 4 hours at room temperature waiting. The finished cookies were beautiful and patriotic looking. Children didn't want to eat them because they looked too pretty. But cookies eventually got eaten anyway. The royal icing was rock hard and difficult to bite through. It stuck to teeth and hurt to chew badly. By 1980, decorated cookies seemed too fussy and time-consuming for modern families. Store-bought cookies were easier and cheaper to buy instead. Nobody had time for elaborate decorating projects anymore. New York-style cheesecake, topped with fresh berries, was the fanciest dessert families could make at home for Independence Day. The crust started with crushed graham crackers mixed with melted butter and sugar. This pressed firmly into a spring-form pan and baked briefly. The crust cooled completely before adding the filling. The filling required pounds of cream cheese, softened to room temperature perfectly. The cream cheese beat until completely smooth, without any lumps whatsoever. Sugar added gradually, while beating constantly on medium speed. Eggs added one at a time, beating just until combined after each. Overbeating made the cheesecake crack during baking later. Sour cream, vanilla extract, and lemon juice mixed in at the end. The filling poured over the cooled crust in the pan. The pan is placed in a larger pan filled with hot water. This water bath prevented cracking during the long bake. The cake baked at 325 degrees for 1 full hour without opening the door. Then the oven turned off completely. The cheesecake stayed inside with the door closed for another hour. This gradual cooling prevented cracks from forming on top. After cooling completely at room temperature, it chilled overnight in the refrigerator. The next day came the berry topping. Fresh strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries arranged on top in patterns. The 3 berries created red, white, and blue colors perfectly. A glaze made from heated jam brushed over the berries to make them shine. The finished cheesecake was absolutely stunning and impressive. Dense, creamy, and perfectly smooth throughout. The berries added freshness and bright color. Each slice was rich and incredibly satisfying. 1 piece was enough for anyone. But cheesecake was expensive to make with all that cream cheese. Homemade cupcakes decorated with patriotic themes became the centerpiece of children's July 4th celebrations. These weren't simple cupcakes from a box mix purchased at the store. The cake battered from scratch using real butter and fresh ingredients. Butter and sugar creamed together until fluffy and pale yellow. Eggs added one at a time with pure vanilla extract mixed in. Flour, baking powder, and salt sifted together in a separate bowl. Milk added alternately with the dry ingredients in 3 additions. The batter divided evenly into paper-lined muffin tins. The cupcakes baked at 350 degrees for 20 minutes until golden. They had to cool completely on wire racks before frosting touched them. Buttercream frosting prepared with real butter and powdered sugar beaten smooth. The frosting divided into 3 separate bowls for coloring. 1 stayed white, 1 dyed bright red, 1 dyed deep blue. Pastry bags filled with each color of frosting. The decorating process began and took forever. Some cupcakes got swirled frosting with all 3 colors together. Others got stars piped carefully on top in white. Some got red and white stripes going across horizontally. Each cupcake decorated differently from the others. Small American flags stuck into the tops as finishing touches. Red, white, and blue sprinkles scattered over everything liberally. The finished cupcakes looked festive, and fun lined up on platters. Children loved choosing which design to eat first at the party. Adults appreciated the homemade taste and real butter flavor. The buttercream was smooth and rich and delicious, much better than store-bought frosting from plastic containers. But decorating 2 dozen cupcakes took hours of standing work. The food coloring stained hands and countertops permanently blue and red. towering coconut layer cake appeared at fancy July 4th dinners in southern homes. This regional specialty required serious skill and patience from experienced bakers. 3 layers of white cake baked in round pans until perfectly done. The cakes had to be perfectly level on top. Uneven layers created a leaning tower that looked terrible. 7-minute frosting prepared on the stovetop in a double boiler. Egg whites, sugar, and cream of tartar beat over simmering water constantly. The mixture beat constantly for 7 full minutes without stopping once. It transformed into glossy white frosting that formed stiff peaks. This couldn't be rushed, or it wouldn't work at all. 1 cake layer placed on a serving plate as the base. Thick frosting spread across the top evenly. The second layer placed carefully on top of that. More frosting spread across. The third layer completed the tower. Frosting covered the top and sides completely. A spatula smoothed everything into perfection. Then came the coconut. Sweetened shredded coconut pressed into the frosting on all sides. The entire cake covered in white coconut. It looked like a snowball in summer. The finished cake was impressive and towering. 3 layers of moist white cake with sweet frosting. The coconut added texture and tropical flavor, but 7-minute frosting was temperamental and difficult to master. It had to be used immediately before it hardened. The timing was absolutely critical. By 1975, Cool Whip replaced real frosting in most homes. Nobody wanted to stand over a double boiler beating egg whites anymore. 15 forgotten desserts down, 15 remaining to discover. Carved watermelons, decorated cookies, layered cheesecakes, and coconut towers fed America through decades of celebrations. The next 5 desserts showcase pies and frozen treats that required special ingredients nobody keeps in their pantries anymore today. Key lime cream pie brought tropical flavors to Midwestern July 4th celebrations during the 1960s. Real key limes were impossible to find outside Florida back then. Most families used bottled key lime juice from the grocery store instead. The pie shell baked blind until golden and flaky throughout. It cooled completely before any filling went inside. The filling combined sweetened condensed milk with egg yolks beaten smooth. Key lime juice and grated lime zest added bright, tangy flavor. The mixture stayed pale yellow-green in color naturally. Food coloring was never added to authentic versions. The filling poured into the cooled pie shell carefully. The pie baked at 350 degrees for 15 minutes until just set. It couldn't overbake, or it would crack and weep liquid. The pie cooled to room temperature slowly on the counter. Then it chilled in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours. Whipped cream spread thick across the top before serving. Some people piped decorative rosettes around the edges. Thin lime slices arranged on top as garnish. The finished pie was tangy, sweet, and refreshing, perfect for hot summer afternoons outside. The key lime flavor was intense and tropical. Each bite was creamy and smooth on the tongue, but key lime juice was expensive and hard to find. Regular lime juice didn't taste the same at all. The unique flavor was worth the extra cost. By 1985, frozen key lime pies appeared in grocery stores. The quality was terrible but convenient. Families stopped making the real version at home. Homemade strawberry gelato was the sophisticated cousin of regular ice cream. Italian families brought this tradition to American July 4th celebrations. The recipe required fresh strawberries at peak ripeness. Anything less produced bland, icy results. The strawberries hulled and pureed smooth in a blender. Sugar and lemon juice mixed into the puree. This macerated for 1 hour at room temperature. Whole milk heated gently with more sugar until dissolved. Egg yolks whisked separately in a bowl. The hot milk tempered slowly into the yolks while whisking constantly. Everything returned to the stove and cooked until thick. The custard base chilled completely overnight in the refrigerator. The next day, strawberry puree mixed into the cold custard. The mixture poured into an ice cream maker and churned. Gelato churned slower than ice cream for denser texture. It also contained less air than American ice cream. The finished gelato was smooth, creamy, and intensely flavored. The strawberry taste was bright and fresh and natural, not artificial or overly sweet like store-bought versions. The texture was denser and richer than regular ice cream. It melted slower on the tongue and coated your mouth. Italians served it in small portions because it was so rich, but gelato machines were expensive and took up counter space. Most families didn't own one and couldn't justify the cost. By 1990, gelato shops opened in cities, and nobody made it at home. The tradition of homemade gelato disappeared completely from American kitchens. No-bake icebox cake became the solution for families without air conditioning. These desserts required no oven time during brutal summer heat. Chocolate wafer cookies formed the base of the classic version. The cookies were thin, crisp, and intensely chocolate-flavored. Heavy cream whipped with sugar and vanilla until stiff peaks formed. The assembly was simple, but required patience and planning ahead. One cookie dipped briefly in milk to soften slightly. It placed on a serving platter as the foundation. A dollop of whipped cream spread on top. Another cookie placed on top of that. More cream added. The pattern repeated until all cookies were used up. The final shape looked like a log lying sideways. The entire log covered in remaining whipped cream completely. The cake chilled overnight in the refrigerator for 8 full hours. During this time, the cookies softened from the cream. They transformed into cake-like texture. The next day, the log sliced on an angle. Each slice showed beautiful layers of chocolate and cream. For July 4th, strawberries and blueberries scattered on top. Red and blue berries against white cream looked patriotic. The dessert was cool, refreshing, and required no baking, perfect for hot summer days without air conditioning. But chocolate wafer cookies became harder to find over time. By 2000, icebox cakes were considered old-fashioned and weird. Young people didn't understand the appeal of softened cookies. Cherry Crisp offered a simpler alternative to cherry pie for busy families. No pie crust required, which saved time and effort. Fresh sour cherries pitted by hand filled a baking dish. The cherries tossed with sugar and a little flour. Almond extract added to enhance the cherry flavor. The topping combined oats, flour, brown sugar, and cold butter. Everything cut together with a pastry blender until crumbly. This mixture scattered evenly over the cherries in the dish. The crisp baked at 375 degrees for 45 minutes. The topping turned golden brown and crunchy. The cherries bubbled thick and syrupy underneath. The smell filled the house with sweet cherries and brown sugar. The finished crisp had to cool slightly before serving. It was best eaten warm with vanilla ice cream on top. The ice cream melted into the hot cherries. Each spoonful combined crunchy topping, tart cherries, and cold cream. The dessert was homey and comforting, much easier than making pie from scratch. Children loved the crunchy oat topping. Adults appreciated the simplicity and speed, but fresh sour cherries were only available 3 weeks yearly. The season was incredibly short and unpredictable. Canned cherries didn't work well in crisps. They released too much liquid and made everything soupy. Frozen cherries were even worse, with too much ice. By 1985, Cherry Crisp had mostly disappeared from summer tables. The brief cherry season made it impractical for most families. Pound cake, simple pound cake, served plain, was a Southern July 4th staple. The cake required only 6 ingredients total: butter, sugar, eggs, flour, vanilla, and salt. That was it. Nothing else added or needed. The name came from using a pound of each main ingredient. Modern versions used smaller amounts but kept the same proportions. Butter and sugar creamed together for a full 10 minutes. This step couldn't be rushed, or the cake wouldn't rise properly. Eggs added one at a time, beating well after each addition. Vanilla extract provided the only flavoring. Flour sifted and folded in gently by hand with a spatula. The batter was thick, smooth, and glossy yellow. It spread into a greased loaf pan evenly. The cake baked at 325 degrees for 1 full hour. It had to bake slowly so the center cooked through. The top cracked slightly as it baked. That was the sign of a proper pound cake. After cooling completely, it sliced into thick pieces. The texture was dense and tight-crumbed throughout. The flavor was pure butter with gentle sweetness. Nothing fancy or complicated about it. Families served it with fresh strawberries and whipped cream. The berries made it patriotic for the holiday. The cake was perfect for dunking in coffee or tea. It didn't fall apart when dipped. But by 1980, pound cake seemed too plain and boring. People wanted chocolate and excitement instead. The simple butter flavor couldn't compete with flashy desserts. 20 forgotten desserts reveal how America celebrated Independence Day. Key lime pies, strawberry gelato, icebox cakes, and simple pound cakes filled tables coast to coast. The final 10 desserts become the most theatrical and dramatic. These showstoppers required advanced skills nobody possesses today. Baked Alaska was the most dramatic dessert ever served at July 4th celebrations during the 1950s and 1960s. This theatrical masterpiece combined ice cream, cake, and meringue in one impossible dish. The dessert defied logic because ice cream went into the oven without melting. The cake placed on a wooden cutting board that could withstand oven heat. Ice cream softened slightly and shaped into a dome on top of the cake. Neapolitan ice cream worked perfectly with its red, white, and pink layers showing. The entire thing froze solid overnight until rock hard throughout. The next day came the meringue preparation right before serving time. Egg whites beaten with cream of tartar until foamy and white. Sugar added gradually, 1 tablespoon at a time while beating constantly. The meringue had to reach stiff, glossy peaks that stood straight up. The meringue spread thickly over the frozen ice cream dome completely. Every inch of ice cream covered with no gaps anywhere showing. The meringue sealed the ice cream like insulation, protecting it from heat. A spatula created decorative swirls and peaks all over the surface. The whole thing went into a 500-degree oven for exactly 3 minutes. The meringue browned golden on the peaks while the inside stayed frozen. The meringue was still hot. Guests gasped at the sight of it arriving. Some families even flambéed it with rum poured over and ignited. The flames added even more drama to the presentation. Slicing revealed the layers inside. Hot toasted meringue, frozen ice cream, and tender cake all in one bite. The contrast of temperatures was shocking and delightful. Hot and cold hit your mouth at the same time. The meringue was sweet and marshmallow-like. The ice cream stayed completely frozen inside its protective coating. But baked Alaska required perfect timing and nerves of steel. One mistake, and the ice cream melted into soup. The meringue could burn if left in too long. It stressed out even experienced bakers who attempted it. By 1975, fewer families had the courage to try making it. The dessert seemed too risky and complicated for home cooks. Restaurants still served it, but charged premium prices. Today, baked Alaska has almost completely disappeared from American tables. Young people have never even heard of it or seen one made. The dramatic flaming dessert exists only in old photographs and memories now. The technique of insulating ice cream with meringue has been completely lost to time. Grasshopper pie brought mint chocolate flavor to July 4th celebrations during the 1960s and 1970s. The crust started with crushed Oreo cookies mixed with melted butter. This pressed into a pie pan and chilled until firm. The filling combined marshmallows melted with milk in a double boiler. Green crème de menthe liqueur added to the marshmallow mixture. White crème de cacao added for chocolate flavor, without color. The mixture cooled to room temperature while you prepared other components. Heavy cream whipped until stiff peaks formed throughout. The cooled marshmallow mixture folded gently into the whipped cream. This created a light, fluffy filling that was bright mint green. The filling poured into the chilled Oreo crust. The pie chilled for at least 4 hours, until completely set. Finished pie was striking with its bright green color. It looked like something from outer space or science fiction. Children were simultaneously attracted and repelled by it. The flavor was intensely minty, with subtle chocolate notes. Adults loved it because the alcohol content was noticeable. The liqueur flavor came through strongly. Children couldn't eat it because of the alcohol. That made it sophisticated and grown-up only. But the bright green color seemed artificial and wrong to many people. Food shouldn't be that color naturally. The crème de menthe was expensive and not a common pantry item. Most people only bought it to make this one pie. The liqueur bottle sat in the cabinet for years unused. By 1985, grasshopper pie seemed dated and too boozy. Newer desserts without alcohol became more popular. The green color looked garish in photographs. Nobody wanted bright green desserts on their tables anymore. Today, grasshopper pie is completely forgotten. Young people have never heard of it or tasted the mint chocolate combination. The dramatic green color exists only in vintage cookbooks from the 1960s now. The technique of using liqueur in desserts has mostly disappeared from home cooking entirely. Patchwork quilt cake was an ambitious project that only the most confident bakers attempted. The cake required baking multiple colors of batter in one pan. The finished cake looked like a quilt when sliced open. Red, white, and blue batters were prepared separately in 3 bowls. White cake batter divided into 3 portions. 1 portion left white, 1 dyed red, 1 dyed blue. The colors had to be vibrant and bold. Small spoonfuls of each color dropped randomly into a greased bundt pan. Red, white, and blue batters alternated throughout the pan. A knife swirled through the batters gently to create marbling. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes. You couldn't see inside while it baked. You had no idea if the pattern worked until cutting. The cake cooled in the pan for 10 minutes. Then it turned out onto a wire rack. The outside looked like regular cake with swirled colors showing. But the real magic happened when you sliced it. Each slice revealed a different patchwork pattern inside. Red, white, and blue squares and swirls throughout. No 2 slices looked exactly the same. Guests marveled at the interior design. Children wanted the slice with the most blue. Adults appreciated the effort and planning required. The cake tasted like regular vanilla cake, with no flavor difference. The colors were purely visual and decorative. But achieving the perfect patchwork look was difficult. Too much swirling and the colors blended into purple. Not enough swirling, and the colors stayed in blobs. The technique required practice and experience. Most bakers' first attempt looked muddy and disappointing. Food coloring had to be added carefully. Too little and the colors were pale. Too much and the cake tasted bitter. By 1990, the effort seemed excessive for a cake that tasted plain. Why spend an hour creating a pattern when the flavor was ordinary? Younger bakers wanted chocolate or interesting flavors instead. The visual appeal alone wasn't enough anymore. Today, patchwork cakes only appear in vintage baking books. Nobody attempts them because the technique seems tedious. The quilted interior pattern has been lost to time. Modern bakers prefer simpler decorating methods that don't require multiple batters and careful swirling techniques. Frozen parfaits served in tall glasses were the elegant dessert choice for fancy July 4th dinners. These weren't simple ice cream sundaes. They were sophisticated layered frozen desserts that required planning ahead. Tall parfait glasses chilled in the freezer beforehand. Strawberry ice cream softened slightly and spooned into the bottom. This first layer went into the freezer to harden. After 1 hour, vanilla ice cream added as the middle layer. Back into the freezer for another hour. Finally, blueberry ice cream topped everything off. The glasses returned to the freezer overnight until solid. Right before serving, whipped cream piped on top. Fresh berries arranged on the cream. A wafer cookie stuck into the cream as garnish. The finished parfait was tall, colorful, and impressive. 3 distinct layers visible through the clear glass. Red strawberry on bottom, white vanilla in middle, blue blueberry on top. The colors stayed separate and didn't blend together. Each spoonful gave you all 3 flavors at once. The combination was refreshing and delicious. But making parfaits required patience and freezer space. Each layer needed an hour to freeze before continuing. The whole process took 4 hours, plus overnight freezing. Parfait glasses took up lots of freezer space. Most families only owned 4 or 6 glasses. That limited how many you could serve. Finding blueberry ice cream was difficult in most stores. It wasn't a common flavor like vanilla or chocolate. Some families substituted Blue Moon ice cream instead, but that flavor was regional and not available everywhere. The parfait glasses were expensive and delicate. They broke easily if knocked over. Storing them took up cabinet space. By 1985, the effort seemed excessive for frozen dessert. Why not just serve ice cream in bowls? The tall glasses were impractical and hard to eat from. The long spoons required were hard to find. People stopped making individual frozen parfaits at home. Today, parfait glasses sit unused in china cabinets. Nobody serves dessert in tall glasses anymore. The elegant presentation has been completely abandoned by modern cooks. The technique of layering and freezing ice cream in stages has been forgotten entirely. Layered Jell-O parfaits were the make-ahead dessert every grandmother mastered perfectly. Individual clear cups showed off the colorful layers beautifully. Cherry Jell-O prepared and poured into the bottom of each cup. The cups chilled for 2 hours until that layer set firm. Lemon Jell-O mixed with sour cream created a white layer. This poured carefully over the red cherry layer. Back into the refrigerator for 2 more hours. Blue raspberry Jell-O topped everything off as the final layer. The cups chilled overnight until all layers were completely set. Whipped cream piped on top right before serving. The finished parfaits were patriotic and pretty. Red, white, and blue layers stacked perfectly. Children loved the bright colors and jiggly texture. Each spoonful combined all 3 flavors at once. The sour cream layer added tanginess. The texture was fun and wobbled when you moved the cup. But making Jell-O parfaits required a full day of work. Each layer needed 2 hours to set before continuing. You couldn't rush the process, or layers would blend. Clear plastic cups worked, but didn't look as nice as glass. Storing dozens of cups in the refrigerator took up all the space. Nothing else fit on the shelves while Jell-O set. The dessert was impressive but labor-intensive. You had to plan a full day ahead. The timing had to be perfect. By 1990, single-serve pudding cups appeared in stores. These were faster and easier than making Jell-O from scratch. Nobody wanted to spend 2 days making layered Jell-O anymore. The elaborate parfaits seemed old-fashioned and unnecessary. Store-bought options were convenient and cheap. Today, Jell-O parfaits only appear at church potlucks. Younger generations think layered Jell-O is weird and dated. The rainbow layers exist only in vintage cookbooks now. The patience required to make them has been lost. Modern cooks want instant gratification and quick results instead. 25 forgotten desserts gone, 5 remaining. Baked Alaska, grasshopper pie, patchwork cakes, and frozen parfaits required serious skill and patience. These theatrical showstoppers impressed dinner guests, but stressed out home cooks. Liberty Bell cake was the ultimate patriotic statement piece for July 4th celebrations. The buttercream frosting tinted golden yellow covered the entire bell. A small spatula smoothed it perfectly smooth. The crack in the Liberty Bell was piped on with chocolate frosting. The date 1776 written across the front. Red, white, and blue ribbons wrapped around the base. A clapper made from fondant or marzipan hung from inside. The finished cake stood upright on a special cake board. It was absolutely stunning and patriotic. Guests took photographs before anyone dared cut into it. But making a bell cake was incredibly difficult. The bell shape didn't cut into neat pieces. Everything crumbled and fell apart when cutting. Serving it was a nightmare. Lemon Freeze Dessert. Lemon Freeze Dessert was the no-bake wonder that appeared on every 1960s July 4th table. This frozen treat required no oven time during brutal summer heat. The recipe came printed on Kellogg's cornflakes boxes for years, pressed into a 9x13 pan, saving some for topping. The base chilled in the refrigerator while you made the filling. Sweetened condensed milk mixed with frozen lemonade concentrate. The mixture stayed thick and yellow. One small piece was enough for most people. Children loved it because of the sweetness. Adults found it overwhelming after a few bites. Cornflake crust seemed strange to some people. Cereal didn't belong in dessert, in their opinion. The texture was unusual. By 1985, the recipe disappeared from cornflakes boxes. Kellogg's stopped printing it for unknown reasons. Without the box recipe, people forgot how to make it. The dessert vanished from July 4th celebrations completely. Today, almost nobody under 50 has heard of lemon freeze. The combination of cornflakes and lemon seems bizarre. The recipe exists only in old handwritten recipe cards. Younger generations have never tasted the sweet tart frozen treat. The concept of using cereal in dessert crusts has been abandoned. Modern desserts use graham crackers or cookies instead. The unique cornflake flavor and crunch has been lost to history entirely. Martha Washington candy was the labor-intensive confection that grandmothers made weeks before July 4th. These chocolate-covered cream balls took hours of hand-rolling work. The filling started with softened butter, beaten with powdered sugar, sweetened condensed milk, added to make it creamy, shredded coconut, and chopped pecans folded into the mixture. Everything chilled until firm enough to handle. Then came the tedious part that required patience. Small portions rolled into 1-inch balls by hand. Each ball had to be perfectly round and smooth. This took forever, with sticky filling on your hands. The balls placed on wax paper and chilled again. After firming up, each ball got dipped in melted chocolate. Semi-sweet chocolate chips melted in a double boiler. One ball at a time dropped into the chocolate. A fork lifted it out, allowing excess chocolate to drip off. The coated ball placed back on wax paper. The chocolate hardened at room temperature. This process repeated for every single ball. Making 100 candies took an entire afternoon. Your hands cramped from rolling and dipping. The finished candies were absolutely delicious. The creamy coconut filling was sweet and rich. The chocolate coating added bitterness. The pecans provided crunch throughout. Each candy was perfectly bite-sized. Families stored them in tins between layers of wax paper. They kept for weeks in a cool place. Grandmothers made them in June for July 4th celebrations. The candies were precious and special. Nobody ate more than 2 at once. By 1990, nobody had time for hand-rolling individual candies. Store-bought chocolates were easier and fancier looking. The homemade candies seemed plain and old-fashioned. They couldn't compete with fancy truffles. Today, Martha Washington candy is almost completely forgotten. Only a few old Southern families still make them. The recipe exists in handwritten cards passed down through generations. Younger family members refuse to learn the technique. The hours of hand-rolling seems absurd in modern times. The tradition is dying out completely with each passing generation now. Apricot salad was the mysterious orange gelatin mold that confused everyone. Despite the name, it wasn't a salad at all. It was pure dessert, made with canned apricots and jello. Orange jello dissolved in boiling water as usual. Canned apricots drained and pureed smooth in a blender. The apricot puree mixed into the orange jello. Cream cheese softened and beaten until smooth. This folded into the jello mixture carefully. Mini marshmallows stirred in at the end. The combination poured into a decorative mold. The mold chilled overnight until completely set. The next day, it unmolded onto a lettuce-lined plate. The finished salad was pale orange and fluffy. The texture was mousse-like from the cream cheese. The marshmallows added little pockets of sweetness. The apricot flavor was subtle and delicate. But calling it a salad was confusing. People expected vegetables and lettuce. Instead, they got sweet dessert. The name didn't match the contents. Some families served it as a side dish. Others served it as dessert. Nobody knew where it belonged on the table. The cream cheese made it rich and filling. One small slice was enough, but canned apricots were expensive and hard to find. A specific brand mattered for the right texture. Some apricots were too mushy and watery. Others were too firm and didn't puree smooth. You had to test different brands. By 1985, the confusion about salad versus dessert ended it. People wanted clarity in their meal courses. Ambrosia salad was the final forgotten dessert that closed every July 4th meal across the American South. This controversial classic combined fruit, coconut, and marshmallows in ways that divided families for generations. The preparation began with fresh oranges peeled and sectioned completely by hand, with all bitter white pith carefully removed using paring knives. Canned pineapple chunks were drained thoroughly in colanders for 15 minutes to prevent the salad from becoming watery and thin. Maraschino cherries were halved precisely for pops of bright red color throughout the creamy mixture. Sweetened shredded coconut was added in generous amounts that some considered excessive, but Southerners deemed absolutely necessary. Mini marshmallows were stirred throughout the fruit base in quantities that horrified health-conscious relatives visiting from northern states. The binding came from sour cream mixed with just enough granulated sugar to balance the tartness without making everything sickeningly sweet. This mixture was folded gently into all the prepared fruit using wooden spoons and patient circular motions that prevented bruising the delicate orange sections. Everything was transferred into glass serving bowls and chilled for at least 2 hours before serving, so the flavors could blend together properly. During this resting period, the coconut softened considerably from absorbing moisture from the fruit juices. The marshmallows dissolved slightly around their edges, creating pockets of pure sweetness that melted on the tongue. The finished salad emerged creamy, sweet, tropical, and completely unlike anything else served at Independence Day celebrations. Every single bite delivered different textures and competing flavors that somehow worked together despite seeming incompatible on paper. The orange sections burst with juice and provided necessary tartness that cut through the richness. The pineapple chunks added tropical sweetness and firm texture that contrasted with everything surrounding them. The coconut remained pleasantly chewy even after hours of refrigeration. Marshmallows turned impossibly soft and cloud-like. The sour cream base tied every disparate element together into something greater than its individual parts. Children adored the marshmallows, and bright cherry-red colors scattered throughout like edible confetti. Adults appreciated the real fruit and coconut combination that reminded them of tropical vacations they couldn't afford. The name ambrosia came from Greek mythology, meaning food of the gods. It was supposed to taste heavenly and absolutely perfect. But the dessert divided American families more completely than any political argument ever could. Some households made it for every single holiday without exception. Others absolutely refused to make it under any circumstances whatsoever. The combination of ingredients seemed fundamentally wrong to traditional cooks raised on proper techniques. Fruit should never mix with marshmallows in respectable recipes. Sour cream had no business appearing in fruit salad alongside candy sweet cherries. These 30 forgotten 4th of July desserts vanished within a single generation, disappearing almost entirely by 1990. What began as essential summer traditions, hand-churned ice cream on back porches, layered Jell-O molds glistening on picnic tables, scratch-made cakes decorated with fresh berries, became relics of a bygone era. The shift wasn't sudden, but gradual and unstoppable. Supermarkets introduced pre-made sheet cakes with chemical frosting. Frozen desserts replaced homemade ice cream. Instant pudding mixes eliminated the need for stovetop custards. The microwave oven made elaborate baking seem unnecessarily time-consuming. By the mid-1980s, families stopped passing down recipes that required patience, precision, and multiple steps. The labor-intensive traditions, whipping 7-minute frosting, carving watermelon baskets, layering trifles in glass bowls felt impractical in an era demanding convenience. Younger generations never learned to separate eggs for meringue or temper chocolate for candy. The skills simply weren't transferred. Today, these desserts exist primarily in faded recipe cards, vintage cookbooks, and the memories of those who tasted them. A few have been revived by food bloggers seeking nostalgia, but most remain lost. The flavors, textures, and communal experience of making them together have disappeared from American Independence Day celebrations, replaced by store-bought convenience and individually wrapped treats that require no effort, no tradition, and no memory worth preserving.